Don't let us to make us exercise. Gwen.
Yeah, that sounds good. Sounds good. That sounds good. You're not gonna have to eat that. Yes, you brought
There's
cake.
King's cake.
Yes, you
Well,
brought
maybe
cake.
sit down in the lobby, eat
Special
it while you wait.
Yes, as I look around, there's enough for everybody.
Oh, there is.
Okay, you want cake, right? Okay.
Are you?
Okay.
Freshly baked.
I just have to find one of those swimmer ready. Jerry's going now. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, there's no-
Doing it 1990. It's just too cold then.
We'll call to order the meeting of the Winters City Council, Tuesday, March the 5th, 6:30. Tracy, could we have roll call, please?
Councilmember Anderson,
Here?
Councilmember Lawrence,
Here.
Councilmember New,
Here.
and Mayor Pro Tem Cowan,
Here.
and Mayor Biaggi.
Karen May, could you lead us to the pledge of allegiance, please?
Oh. I grew up. It's an honor.
To the flag
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Hey, Joe.
Okay, we have approval of the agenda.
Mayor, council, no changes to the agenda.
I move to approve. Second. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None? Passed unanimous. Council staff comments. Councilmember Lauren.
Thank you.
On February 20th, along with other council members, I participated in the fire chief interviews. I was so impressed with the depth and breadth of knowledge from Brad, Art, and Matt. Suffice it to say, we have a highly qualified team of candidates. On February 21st, I traveled to Grass Valley to attend my first League of Cities board meeting. On February 22nd, the League board had a private session with Governor Newsom, where he gave information on pensions, public safety, housing finances, and homelessness. After the presentation, I was able to ask him a question. I asked him if he would be interested in participating in a rural summit for rural cities. He said yes. And I'm working with the league to make that happen. So it's really exciting. On February 25th, in discussion, I'm gonna skip that. February 25th, along with other members of the Hispanic Advisory Committee, we met with Financial Director Shelley Gunby about creating a 501c3. So the Hispanic Advisory Committee would remain a Hispanic Advisory Committee, but there would be an additional 501c3 that would be created out of that group. On Wednesday, February 26th, the board of WRA met to discuss our direction for future meetings and the possibility of later uniting the Water Resource Agency under the same meeting with the groundwater group. By Thursday the 28th, I attended and was judged for the Winters Annual Poetry Slam. It's organized by Olivia Rodriguez, and it's great. The littlest kids, all the way to high school, and high school kids and the junior high kids do this big competitive slam, and there's awards, and it was just really amazing to hear the kids. I wish they could come to council and perform. On Monday, March 4th, I met with John Donlevy to discuss the agenda and also had a Hispanic Advisory Committee meeting. That's all.
Thank you. Councilmember Anderson. Thank you. Okay, Councilmember New?
On February 20th, I also attended the interviews for fire chief. And as we said, all three candidates are superb. Also on the 20th afternoon, I went to Yolo County Housing meeting. And again, we're still just trying to find places for everybody, and everything at Yolo County Housing is going well, but there are more people than there are locations. On the 21st of February, I went to the SACOG meeting, and as I've reported in the last several meetings, we're really still working on greenhouse gas and how we're going to meet the goals that are quite high. So I think we have a lot of work to do, and it's going to depend on every city, county doing their part to make it happen. And then this morning I met with John Dunleavy about the agenda tonight.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Cowan?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. On the 20th, I also participated in the fire chief interviews, and like was said, 3 wonderful candidates, and the good news is they're all staying in winter, so we can't go wrong. On the 21st, I attended the EDAC meeting, putting the final touches on the report. It's going to be out soon. And yesterday I met the city manager.
Thank you. Yeah, on the 20th of February, I also participated in the interviews for the winter fire chief, and I would echo the comments of the other council members. We do have 3 very good candidates, and any of the 3 would do a good job for winter, so we're proud of them. On the 21st, I attended the Economic Development Advisory Committee meeting. On the 23rd, I helped with the Project Playground Workday, doing some staining. The 26th, I attended the Planning Commission meeting. On the 28th, I met with the downtown business owners, as well as Carol and John, to discuss some of the waste issues for the alleyway and how to solve that. And on the 4th, I met with the city manager for the agenda review. So thank you everyone for all your hard work on the committee assignments. We appreciate it. Okay, up next, we have public comments for anything that's not on tonight's agenda. I have several forms that are turned in here. So I'll start with the one on top, Kate Laddish.
Good evening, Kate Laddish, 400 Morgan Street, number 21. And this is quick, and my chlorinated hair and I are here to say that the pool is open and it's great, and there are enthusiastic swimmers there, and we're very grateful to Tracy and everybody on the pool staff for making this happen and making it happen starting the beginning of March. So Oscar Peterson is this year's pool manager, and he's hit the ground running, and a very big tip of the hat to the maintenance staff who were able to put in, I believe it's new LED lights within the pool so they're more energy efficient, and then also address some different problems so that then the heater could work. I think there was some different gas and electrical problems, and they addressed it, got it going, and I can tell you as of 12 minutes ago, that pool was 80 very swimmable degrees. So it is open from 6 to 8 p.m. weeknights and 9 to 11 on weekdays. $50 a month or $5 a swim. Come join us. Thank you so much, and big thanks to Tracy.
Now, Kate, you said that the temperature of the water is okay.
I said it is 80 swimmable degrees.
Okay. So we're going to take your word for it. So
It is in the middle of the designated range for a lap swimmer competition pool. And so it is so much better than the 72 degrees that it was Friday morning when Tracy and I touched base. And so compared to that, 80 is totally workable.
we're going to consider this the high point of the swim season.
There we go, swimmable degrees.
Thank you, Kate. Up next, we have Gwen Pisani.
I'm wearing the wrong hat. Gwen Pisani, 102 Quill Court. I am here, and this has been a work in progress. And I've got to first of all remind John that one of his first projects when he came to Winners was the original skateboard park. Since then, my youngest, Christopher, has been here. He started skating when he was 9. He's now 26 and he's still skating. And as of right now, we don't have a skate park. So when PG&E came and took it down, the kids actually skated till midnight that night, and that was it. So I think we took a picture of the sign. And since then, the kids have been waiting, or the young adults have been waiting for a new skateboard park. I have 5.5 pages of just people at the gym coming in that would love it to come back. Again, we live at 102 Quill Court. I have no problem having to go back down to Valley Oak Park. We're used to that skateboard sound, and I think that's the most wisest decision is to put it back down there because the sound, because it does make noise. But we always say we want people shopping and skating in winters. We want our kids to play and skate in winters. And the ones that are able to move out or to drive, they're going to all these amazing skateboard parks out of town. We want them to be able to skate in town, and we want a safe place for them to go. The police have been very lenient in letting them go to certain areas to skate. All they want to do is be able to skate safe. And like I said, John, that was one of your first projects, and we were very proud of that at one time. But again, we need another park. And as far as I am understanding that PG&E promised some of that funds when they tore it down, that there was some funds for part of the park, the new park. The kids aren't asking for anything elaborate. They just want a safe place to skate. With that in mind, 2020 Olympics, skateboarding is in the Olympics. So we're going to have a whole new realm of kids that, you know, when you see the stars up there when they're skateboarding or if they're snowboarding or figure skating, whatever, they want to be the next kid in the Olympics. 2020 is the first round that skateboarding is going to be represented. So we might have some future gold medalists, skateboarders and winners. So I just ask that you will take a look at it and see that if there's some funds sitting around, it's something that can be added to. You know, start with just, you know, a great piece of cement, and the kids will make it work. But we just want to be able to have a safe environment for our kids coming up, and our young adults are 27, like my son and all his gang. And then we've also got kids 40, 50 years old or so skating. Just have a safe environment. That's all I ask. And I leave the petition for you to take a look at, because it says to John Lenz on the. I appreciate your time, gentlemen and ladies, and let's bring skateboarding back. Let's keep them in town. Thank you.
Thank you, Glenn. Eric will look into that, right, Eric?
Oh, yeah.
See, I told him, he's gonna build, I asked, he builds, they'll come.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Up next, I have Tina Loudon.
Come on, Karen. It was 2 weeks ago. Oh, well, now I got that, like,
So we're waiting.
Hi, I'm Tina Loudon, 320 Newman Street. Karen, 100 Casella Court. Thank you, Mayor, thank you, council people, thank you, John. Spring luncheon is gonna be March 21st. You're all invited, even those that are not 55 years old and older. We're gonna have some wonderful soup. This year is gonna be soup from around the world. We're having pozole from El Pueblo. We're having, like the whole, from Ocean. I really don't know the name of it, but I made it up. And did you want the spelling on that, Tracy? And Wade is making his New England, because you know, it's around the world, clam chowder. It is New England, right?
As far as I know.
And Karen's making a
White.
soup, she's on, and so is Joe. And we're gonna have awesome desserts from around the world. We're gonna have biscotti, we're gonna have homemade biscotti, homemade baklava, homemade Russian tea cakes, and more. So please come, and I will give you the official flyer.
One's already in the directory out front.
It is, thank you so much. And that's it.
Praise the Lord.
Thank you,
Or,
Tina.
it's free. Free.
Got the message, thank you. Okay, let's see, next up we have Dave Adams.
Dave Adams, 711 Foxglove Circle. I wanted to bring up one of the factors that I think affected the flooding on Foxglove Circle that I haven't seen addressed, and that's the re-engineering of the overflow for the pond at Rancho Arroyo. When the pond was re-engineered, they put in the sound wall. And when they put in the sound wall, they cut in half the size of the overflow from the detention pond out onto the street. I think that perhaps if that overflow was still the same size as the original design, the water wouldn't have built up enough to overflow into people's yards. It would have just gone out the overflow into the street. So I'd like to suggest that maybe the engineer, city engineer or something, look at that specific issue. It probably won't be a factor, for another 100 years when we get another big flood, but if lightning struck the control mechanism for those pumps and the pump rose or the pond rose again and went out the overflow, again, probably go through that house at 720 or 620. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you, Dave.
That'll be a great segue, and I think we'll address that when we do the presentation.
So is there anyone else in the audience that would like to speak to an item that is not on tonight's agenda? Okay, seeing none, we will move on to the consent calendar.
Yeah, Mayor and Council, just a couple of items. Item A are the minutes, minutes from the regular meeting from February 19th. Item B is an amendment to our existing agreement with West Yost Associates regarding the project that we have out at our wastewater treatment facility. This is about a $13,500 amendment. Previously, they handled the design. This is just an amendment, just we're moving forward with the actual inspection. The council's awarded the contract for this, and now that we have all the scope, we're able to do the amendment and have it go out and inspect it. Item C is an amplified sound permit for the Chamber of Commerce for the Hispanic Music Festival that they're proposing. This is just for the permit. I will tell you that we're still working through a lot of logistics regarding the location. They're proposing a community center. They're going to have it in the amphitheater. I think there's a lot of logistics as we kind of unpeel the onion a little bit. There are a couple of things to address, but this is just for the sound permit itself. And then finally, item D, this is a resolution of the council in support of the SACOG Green Means Go initiative. One thing that SACOG has done is they've set some extremely ambitious goals as far as reduction of overall greenhouse gas emissions within the Sacramento region. The thing that's nice about this is that they've actually come up with a program that takes two approaches, one a transportation approach and the second is a planning approach. This resolution is required. They have a pre-application period where we can submit application of a potential grant project ideas. Not a whole lot of detail, but just to kind of get yourself in the door a little bit on this. The application or the pre-applications are due on March 15th. Our next city council meeting is until the 19th. We've got to get this in. We still have a lot of flexibility going forward, but we think that this is a really good program. SACOG is trying to find its niche on various things. I think this is certainly a good one. So that's the consent calendar.
I'd like to comment on item C. Please be moved to discussion item.
So you want to move the amplified sound permit
Yeah,
to a discussion item?
Yeah, I just want to make a comment.
Okay, we can move item C down to our discussion item number 3. So any other questions, comments on your consent calendar?
I'll move approval of the consent calendar with item C being moved for later discussion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you. Okay, up next, we have a presentation on the Public Works Superintendent on the Rancho Arroyo Detention Basin.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. This evening, what I'd like to do is kind of give the council a kind of an overview of what Public Works has been dealing with over the last month or so as far as the storms go and the Rancho Arroyo detention basin. Are they up?
No.
Computer just live streaming. There. Okay, by the looks of that, basically what I'm really just going to be showing is a whole bunch of pictures and a couple videos, and hopefully videos work, and if they don't, Tracy will make them work. So I know that the city manager is always keeping you guys up to date with what's going on during these kind of crisis moments. And, you know, I try to jump into that thread and keep the council and staff kind of updated. And so what I'm really just trying to show you guys is kind of more of, this is what we're talking about. So you guys kind of have a better idea when we talk about water coming in from certain areas that we're trying to either sandbag or keep out, or if we're pumping, what we're actually trying to do. So that's kind of what this is really about here. You're stuck. Can you just click on that? There you go. There we go. Okay, so I just have a picture here. I wasn't even going to use a photo, but I just wanted to do this. It's more appropriate than the last one. The guys actually have the rain gear. And the reason why I did this is just more to kind of give our guys credit what they've been doing over mainly in the month of February as far as the work they've had to do through the night. So just to kind of give you a rundown, in a 5-day period, we put in 295 man hours, which, you know, that's the labor cost, 278.5 hours of equipment use, and that's the cost. Filled up 1,400 sandbags and 10 yards of sand. So that was just basically what we were doing out kind of in the field. The other thing this time, kind of learning from the first incident, we actually learned a lot, but one of the things that we try to do a little bit different is try to make different sandbag stations. We usually just kind of have one at the corp yard, and then we kind of found out the first time that somebody just comes and takes all the sandbags and everything disappears on us. So we had a few different locations this time where people can go, and we just put it on the web page, and so we let people know where those stations are. So this is the detention basin here. So what I wanted to show you is this is in 2017, and you'll see kind of around the tree right there, you see a road that comes in, and then there's 3 different locations of where water infiltrates in there, and each one of them just a kind of a concrete strip that comes down. Each one of the one's in the corner, and the other 2 are on the sides. Those actually go to the bottom of the detention basin. So in 2018, in February, you could see the road's gone. They made the detention pond bigger. And if you notice where those concrete things are now, they're about, I think it's about 14 feet above the water line. That's the bottom now. So I'm just trying to give you an illustration of it's a little bit deeper now. So those are the things that the design engineer team has said, this is what's going to make this work. This is in September 2018. They started construction here. And then this year, I just wanted to give the council kind of a guideline. It's really small. I thought the print was going to be a little bit bigger. But these arrows are just kind of going to show you how this system works. So if you look over where the road is, that's Main Street there, and Basie Street where it ties in. You're going to see in a few pictures down the road here. That's where there's a manhole there. So that's one of the locations that we would pump out of and then just pump water up onto the street. But the water basically comes in. There's a 60-inch storm drain there that comes in. Up on the north side up there is where that's kind of the intake where it flows to that side. The first one is it's a low flow intake. There's an 8-inch force main there that actually will take the low flow, and we can force that all the way up to the landfill future sports park. So that's what that one there is. And the big vault down above that is where the water goes into and where the new pumps are. So this is like I said, that's a 60-inch storm drain there. So that's where everything on all the new development comes in through that 60-inch line there. So you can imagine if that it's 60-inch pipe, you got a couple feet above it. So if we're looking at water on the top of that concrete there, it's about 7 feet deep, which is just under halfway. This is the intake, the kind of big ball pumps are up on top. You can see where the two pumps are that the contractor was pumping out of. And this one here, just to give you perspective, you look at those grates that are in front of those, each one of those grates are 6 feet tall. So there's 4 of those. See that's 24 foot tall there. These are the pumps up on top. Each one of these are 10-inch lines. They all go into a 20-inch line that feeds out to kind of a lift station. And then these pumps, each one of these pumps that are going to be pumping into these here will pump 4,042 gallons a minute. So the way this system is going to work, it's scheduled for a startup on Thursday with temporary power. Hopefully they follow through with it. Basically, you're never going to have 3 pumps on. One's always a backup. So you're going to use one, and then when it hits emergency mode, it'll kick the second one on. So that's how the system works. This here, you can see the white pipe on the side. That's the pipe that they're pumping into that manhole over there, which flows out into Main Street storm drain system. One of the reasons why I kind of took this shot, I know the mayor had, kind of sent a question out on a text about why aren't we just pumping everything into where it normally goes? Well, a couple reasons. One, if you look at all that dirt, that's all dirt there. But when it rains, that's clay mud where we can't get out into that area. And it's basically you're looking past that light post is where we would have to get to. That excavator that's sitting there, it's there for one reason, and that's just to move their equipment off of that place or on the street or move their pumps around, because that's the only thing that's going to be able to move out there. The other one is if we would overcome the capacity of the 24-inch storm drain that it all flows out into. So just to kind of touch on that. So this is February 12th. This is pumps empty. Everything looks good. So the storm comes in next morning. Now you can just barely see the top of that concrete. So we're already at like 7 feet in one storm through the night. So right then, what we decided is we just right away, we learned, obviously, there's people here that I can't make eye contact with. So right away, we brought 2 pumps in where I was talking on Main Street. We dropped those in. That's the 2,600 gallons a minute that we were just basically pushing out onto the street. And what we're trying to do is not inundate one system. We're trying to spread it out. So then we got 2 other pumps, each one capable of doing 2,400 gallons a minute. And we started pushing that down on Anderson and to get it to go out to another system. With that being said, the next morning, this is what we woke up to. I get a text at 3 in the morning. I had 2 guys on call that night, just making sure everything was good. I get a text saying, hey, it just rose 5 feet. And we were pumping at that point with the help of the other guys. Combined, we're over 11,000 gallons a minute we were pumping out, and it still rose 5 feet. So we were right here at the brim of this thing. So at 6 o'clock, I just called this emergency line, called Rain for Rent, and I just want to kind of publicly give Rain for Rent just huge props for the help they did. Not only just, obviously they're going to rent us whatever we want to pay for, but we had to get those guys come out, and you'll see in a little bit, there's hard pipe. They had a crew come out and just knock things out, which made me feel like, within 2 hours, I could have an easy 15,000 gallons a minute being pumped out of that thing by those guys coming out. So it gave me a lot of peace of mind of knowing that those guys would step up and help us out. So what we did, we kept the 2 out on Main, and then we brought in another big one that pumped 5,000 gallons a minute, and we pushed it out onto Anderson as well. And then what we had to do, and I'll show you the next picture, we had to take one of the other 2,400 gallon a minute pumps, move it down to Anderson to move it out of that system because we started flooding on Apricot. So this little diagram here, you can see the little red dots on Main Street over there. That's where we had pumps. We were throwing it out on the street. We had another one up on the alleyway between the detention pond and the cemetery, and we were pushing that on the Foxglove. And then the big one, the 5,000 gallon minute one, we were pushing out up on Anderson. And then up on Apricot, we were taking it from there and then forcing it over to Hemingway and then down Anderson. We had to kind of get it up over a ridge there so it wouldn't come back into the same system, because this is what it was doing on Apricot. Apricot, notoriously, there used to be a submersible pump inside this. Apparently this is just, it's a bad system. So a bad storm will actually back this system up. Well, until I decided to drive down the street and I saw this and I see the neighbors out there kind of scratching their head, it's like, okay, we had to change things. We took another pump and basically we were using the one 5,000 gallon a minute pump, pushing it out onto the street down here, and then from here, pumping another 2,400 gallons a minute. And it actually pulled that down pretty quickly. And these are the guys from Rain for Rent that were out setting this pump up. So when we did that, we were able at 5:30, we ended up shutting the pumps down that night. The pond was down right above the, right kind of in the middle of the inlet there, that 60-inch inlet. And one of the reasons why we shut it down, the other two pumps that the contractors had out there, theirs ran all night long. But here's two of the pumps that are sitting there. But if you see that, that's a 60-inch or 60-foot of pipe there. That's a suction line. You see where it kind of curls off to the side. At 5:30, I can start seeing that there's like a funnel. And if that starts happening, the pipes will start cavitating. And within an hour or so, that thing's going to be sucking air and we burn those up. So we knew that, okay, we're just going to monitor this thing. They're going to keep theirs running. We're going to shut ours down. In the manhole on Main Street, they were doing the same thing. They weren't drawing enough water, so we backed them off. So it worked out, and we get up the next day. This is kind of what we were looking at. So obviously we can breathe a little bit easier. This tracks right here in the gate is where we had another pump at one time when we first started. But you can see the aluminum pipe here. They have to come out and actually hard pipe that big pump. We just turned it down Anderson and then flushed it down the street. And then actually had to ask a couple of people that work at the school district or the middle school to move their vehicles because there's so much water hitting just the tires on their car. It was actually backing up on their bumper and stuff. So a lot of water being moved. So what I want to do now is kind of show you outside of the pond of what the issues we were dealing with that we didn't really know about until we start trying to figure out where it's all coming from and why it's coming so fast. So what these arrows are kind of just hot spots of this is what it looks like now. There's
no
homes.
way for Tracy to circle something. Nobody can see the others.
Oh, okay. The blue arrows. Okay, so those are kind of hot spots right now. And those streets are all there. They're paved. There's homes there now, but those are hot spots. Well, this is what it used to look like, 2003. So those hot spots, you can look at them now. They don't make a whole lot of sense because there's a ditch line that goes across there. Used to run all the way across the field, and that ditch would actually, what we come to find out, it didn't always just flow one way, like say out to Dry Creek or the other way. It would flow both kind of either way, or it would hold water. But none of the water on the top end would actually get to the other side. So moving ahead, we look at those hot spots up on the top, right where Tracy has the arrow there, that first arrow, we've got a lot of water coming off of. That's the O'Brien property and the Martinez Ranch. So this is Moody Street Road to Road 88, where it starts to go around our old landfill and up to the wastewater treatment facility. So that's how much water we had coming off onto that street. And so just to, if I can get this thing to work. Can you just click that, please? Click it too hard. That's not. We had this figured out, I promise. How about double click? Oh, single click. There.
There you go.
Okay, so just to give you an idea how much water is coming in, it's going out into the field right there. And what that was doing was it was getting by what used to be, say, a ditch or something that used to be there. It's just going straight out of the field. And then So what we had to do is right past that, this is what we did in the middle of the night, is we just grabbed a bunch of sandbags and ran them across the street. And, you know, that was about a little over 6 inches deep right there. So what we did is we cut through our fence over there and went out with a backhoe as far as we could reach, dug a trench, and then had to kind of dig by hand the rest of the way to get all that water to just drop down into the landfill. And so what we ended up doing the next day, we came out, because everyone was just driving, the people that lived there were just driving over it, which is understandable because they got to get out. So, but it was destroying all the sandbags. So we just tried to clear it off to the side. And you can see where we kind of detoured it here so it would drop into the inside of that corner. And then the trench goes out. So we actually shut a large, I mean, from what was coming right there, we got at least 85% of that water that was hitting there. With that being said, as soon as you get past us, there's still water that you know gets back onto the streets there. So the next one, that next arrow that drops down, that's Taylor Street there. It will be.
This one.
So the second one, yes, that top corner there, that's the landfill gate. So, and that's another place where it would come down and it would just cross over and, let's see if I can get this one. How about a single click? There. So all of these are quick videos, they're unedited, so it's pouring down rain sometimes, so I'm just trying to get in. And when I actually did these videos, I had no intentions of doing a slide until afterwards. I thought, you know, I need to just kind of show the council what it is we've been talking about. But it gives you a better idea with the video to show you just how much water is moving through there. So as you come down, you'll see an arrow that comes towards the east and then drops down on Taylor Street. It's another, this is Taylor Street right here. So you can see where that ditch that is partially there, it's blocked off and eliminated up further, but it's just inundated this whole thing and it's just floods into the storm drain system. And this is,
You know, go back, just 2 slides.
2 slides.
One more. So that is a half-finished street. It's not even a finished street. And,
Yeah.
and that's an issue. You know, as Eric kind of points out, you've got, you can see where the sheeting of the gravel and everything was actually pushing everything to the south side. Previously, that water was not going into the current where it's going right now. It would go down Moody Slough. And the issue that we have here is obviously as you're looking west, as you look straight at that picture, the cones are going to the west. So you've got a half-finished street right there. And, well, it's not even finished. But then as you go west on that street will eventually be built out, sending water going into different areas. But the kind of the half-finished nature of what's out there causes the water, and I click on that one slide to right there. That's water that normally wouldn't be going into the same watershed or into the same water area on that thing.
And I'll go down further on Moody Slough to kind of show you exactly what you're talking about. So what's happened to fill that ditch is this is another water that's running off the hill that's created. There's a little ditch here that ties into Taylor Street and helps fill up that road or that ditch that's on Taylor Street. So once it makes that turn, it basically ends up right here and just flooding the streets out, which right now it's dropping into the storm drain, heading straight to the detention pond at a high rate of speed. So the last one up there, what John was just talking about, the last arrow up on the top end, that's coming off the Benson property. And if you look on that side of what he's talking about, number one, the road on the south side of the road is just dropped off probably 1.5 feet on the elevation from the top side. But what used to be up by the fence there, when the road was level, was a little ditch that ran across there. And so in the last meeting I had with the developers, you know, we told them, hey, and I showed them these videos and these pictures and told them these are the areas that you guys need to fix. And I know one of their concerns was, well, there's fiber optic underneath there, so they gotta be careful. Well, just call USA and figure it out. You gotta fix this thing, because where it used to go, back to that original ditch line, is it would run on the north side of the Moody Slough, drop down into where that ditch is, and either go out towards the Benson property or right on the north side of Shirley Rominger and Neiman. There's a little pond there. That's kind of a normal natural detention area as well. So that's where the water used to go to. And so that's one of the things that they've been made aware of, that they need to fix this problem here. I'm frozen. Okay, so so at the bottom end, the arrows at the bottom, you can see there's one up right on the top end where it comes off of the hill. They kind of shaved over the ditch again and made a little ramp right there so they can get out there. Well, the water kind of sheds off, comes down Taylor again, drops onto Basie, and then just comes right into the detention pond. On the bottom end is that ditch line that runs behind the houses on Roosevelt. So this is that pond behind Roosevelt. This is back on the backside of Roosevelt, the dead end of Valley Oak Drive, and then it basically turns and goes back into Dry Creek. Well, there's a high spot in there, and so like you said, once the water gets so high, it will fill up and go back out. Those pictures, if I were to back up, that picture right there is not taken the same day that one was. So when the water was at this level, when the water was at that level, it was flowing out into Dry Creek out there. So what we had to do here is, this was kind of the big one. And right now, that's what it looks like. Even today, you can kind of see where the water level is. There's sandbags there. So we have about a 3-foot wall of sandbags. And then we actually caught the contractor out there who was on a big old excavator, and you can see kind of those muddy tracks. And he built that big old berm, because when we did it, it blew through what we had done. And so if you're standing on Basie where it's developed right now and you're looking back towards the ditch, that's how, and that's just a picture of the storm that we had during the day, which everyone knows. The ones at night are 10 times worse, but that's kind of what we're getting, flowing straight off of those hills into that ditch and then out into there. So this is what we had built this thing up, and it breached over during the storm on the 13th. And once it breached over, it was, you can just see how much water is coming through. And I think this video gets kind of choppy, and it was pouring down rain, so I was just kind of going real quick. But you can see how much water is on the street there. You look up Taylor, it's coming down there. It's the ditch is filled up. At this point, it is actually going both directions. So what we did on the 13th, I think, we were out there, and by 9:30, we kind of gave up on this pump. So with all the pumps that we had over there, we had Solano Water or Solano Irrigation actually let us borrow a pump. So they bought a pump and put it right where that pallet is. And what we had to do to even get out there is, if you ever notice, anytime there's construction, there's mud site or construction site, they have to have this maintenance rock. So there's big rock put out so that when cars drive off of there, it kind of takes all the mud off. Well, what we had to do with about 6 inches deep of water is go out with a backhoe and just spread that rock so we can get out into where the water was, sandbag it up and dig a trench. And then right where that pallet is, we dug a big old hole. And so the idea is, we were trying to put a pump there, pump the water out onto Taylor Street, let it run down the gutter right there. So unfortunately, it was one of those situations where the pump worked great until they brought it over to let us use it, and they couldn't get it started. And so what we found out by bridging that up is the water naturally was just filling up slowly. So within an hour or two, we were about a foot deep of water where that mud is, and it just started breaching over Taylor and slowly just going down the gutter. So it was actually working great for us. The next day, just to make sure, we came back and we put actually a couple hundred feet of sandbags to try to divert it sooner. So we kind of had two different breaks there. And I know in the last, since we've done that, the ditch hasn't breached, and we don't have, there's water still gonna come off the lots up there on the Basin, but none of the water from here is getting passed over to Basin Street. So those have, like I said, I just wanted to give council kind of an update of what we've been dealing with. So when we start talking about, we were sandbagging on Basin, this is what we're dealing with. We're talking about that canal. The contractors have been told it's their obligation to put that ditch back. And to this day, they haven't, and I know they're gonna say, well, they can't get out there. So we've kind of told them where the hot spots are, what they need to do, and they've assured us that they're gonna take care of it. Like I said, as far as the pumping goes, there's gonna be the generators out there. Temporary power is supposed to be hooked up on the 7th, so we'll see if they follow through with that. And I think they're trying to leave a little bit of water in there so that they can actually test the pumps. Because if they would have pumped it all out, then it would kind of just sit there and wait for the next storm to come. So.
One of the things that we've asked is that it's supposed to rain a little bit tonight, is that they don't pump down the pond. Tonight's storm isn't going to bring enough water, but if we can get it up, they'll be out there on Thursday. And the good news is that everything that Eric has described is with the pumping system has not been operable. As he talks about, is bringing in all these other pumps. The critical factor here is to get the pumps in the pond working. They are absolutely major pumps to be able to pump all this stuff out. And then it's just managed. Basically, as elevation of the water comes up, the pumps come on, they're getting the water out of the thing. The critical things, number one, we found water coming in from sources that it wasn't expected. Number two, obviously the breach in that canal, that's a lot of water that was going to fill those things up. Eric and our team, I think, have done a very good job. The perspective is that since January 16th and 17th, we've had 3 100-year events that have come in with all these things happening. The last one that we had, once we buttoned everything up, for the most part, we've been in pretty good shape. They've been able to get out and actually manage the pumps, having the external pumps instead of having the ones for the detention basin. If we had the pumps in the pond working, we wouldn't have needed to have those other things. So hopefully with them getting the system in, the good news is that it actually provides some extra things that Eric talks about in the additional pipe, that there's kind of a fail-safe in it, that if we had to, we could actually pump the water north into the landfill if there was ever an issue. But at the end of the day, the outflow on this thing is a 60-inch pipe, and a perspective is that practically if you take all the other major areas of the city, they all flow into a 60-inch pipe that goes into Grant Avenue. So we and this area isn't even as large as the area that goes into the current 60-inch pipe. So hopefully they're going to be out there on Thursday to get everything up to speed. They're going to operate off temporary power. This would go into our SCADA system, so our ability to know whenever power goes down, if there's ever an issue with any of the pumps, we're notified with those things. If permanent power goes down, there currently isn't permanent power out there to the subdivision, but they'll have the temporary power. So there's basically we get alarms on permanent power going out, the backup power goes on, and then if there's any issues whatsoever with the backup power, we're notified about that.
And then one thing I didn't touch on is the overflow, and I have a meeting, tomorrow with some of the engineers, so I'll make sure that I tell them they need to reevaluate
You know,
that as well.
they're already on it. We went out there and, actually Dave sent me, he sent me pictures and everything, and we've pointed that out. The flood engineering team, has been all over this thing. We've evaluated, they basically cut some smaller holes and actually Dave said, well, hey, why don't you just, double the size or take the thing out. There's some pretty practical solutions to the overflow. One of the things, when I went out, I met with some of the neighbors out there. One of the issues was, well, can you build a berm or something? There's a critical unfinished aspect of that pond, is they're supposed to build a maintenance road completely around, which will elevate the current area behind all the houses, behind the wall, by almost 18 inches. So the idea that, we talked about a berm, well, there is going to be a berm. There's going to be an 18-inch additional road that will go up behind all of that. So you take the combination of getting the pond operating, finishing the project, including the maintenance road that will go around, which will help gain additional things. If there was ever a fail-safe, having that maintenance road is nice because you can pull the pumps and anything else that you need out there to address the things. And notwithstanding the water coming from the other areas, especially coming out of the Highland Canal, that's anybody who's ever been out there who knows anything about that soil, there's a very limited absorption. That soil out there is clay, and once it has reached full absorption, that water just sheets off of, that's almost 100 acres of water that are just sheeting out there. What's happening on Moody Slough, as Eric showed, there are some of us who have walked out there for many years, and it's like we've never seen it, especially the water coming off of the Benson property that's out there. That's never happened. That water has never gone into that direction on things.
So one thing I missed, that down below, the yellow lines there, that's the maintenance road that John's referring to. That the elevation of that will be a foot above the elevation of the grade of the backyards of those homes there. So that's part of the thing that I just missed. I meant to mention it, but I didn't. So, no questions? All right, thank you.
Now, I know how these things work. The detention ponds are designed and engineered to take care of the runoff from the development that they're supposed to serve. And so I'm not too worried about that part. My concerns is with the areas where it breached. This canal that's on the property to the west, the orchards to the north, and what's being done to permanently take care of that? Is there a plan there? Is the developer taking care of that? Is that somebody else's problem, adjacent property owners? Because that's what caused the thing to overflow, was getting all this excess water from areas outside of the development. So, do we have any answers to that yet?
Yeah. There's the section that phases 4 and 5 that are not designed to go into the wastewater pond. That's the water that should be going into Dry Creek, as far as that. And one of the things that I've asked the engineering team to do is put together information on exactly how that's going to work. They've been working on it for a couple of weeks, but
So that's to the west.
To the west.
Okay, what about to the north? Moody Slough and the properties up there that you were showing us all the pictures of it during the.
That's the developer, well, whoever they're gonna say is in charge of doing it. They have told us that they're gonna get on it, that the ditch is gonna get put back. And then up on the ditch on the north side of Moody Slough, they gotta get in and get that to where it runs down Moody Slough, or it runs east instead of running south.
And the water that they showed coming off of the O'Brien property, coming off of the Martinez Orchard, yeah, that's water that we've never seen before. And as they're looking to address that, understand that we're, if you're out there, we're Moody Slough and Road 88 come into each other. The amount of water that's cheating down there, now understand that intersection will be where Valley Oak Street comes in. So the ability for the water to go down Valley Oak and into Dry Creek, it will happen as part of that. But the water that's coming off of the orchards, there are some of us, Councilmember Anderson and I have walked out there for 15 years. We've never seen it run off of this. And this gets into some of the farming practices that are going on. There's an expansion of the more permanent crops like the orchards, and the amount of water that's currently going across Road 88. We're going to go into the second year where that road has been washed out, whereas years prior, it was never washed out. The amount of water that's coming off of some of these properties is a lot. Now, mind you, we've had 3 100-year events, but that doesn't mean that we're not going to continue to get those. So, number one, those properties, they aren't even in the city. They aren't even within our sphere of influence. So, the benefit of driving around on Valentine's Day with a flood engineer all day is we have the ability to go out and do this. That's how we found the breach in the Highland Canal, causing us all the problems. That's where we found all the cheating water that's going on. So as we drive around, we were able to see these things. They took a lot of notes, a ton of pictures, a lot of video on this stuff. So, the good news is that I think we have a handle on many of these issues, and hopefully we'll get back to a sense of normalcy. But we've got a whole list of all these things that we need to start addressing, and we'll put that on to not only the engineers but also to the development team.
Thanks, Eric. We appreciate all the work that you and your crews have done out there to keep these waters down. I mean, we had those, like you said, after that first big rain where we had the overflow, we've had 2 very, very large storms since then, and you've been able to keep it from overflowing again. So
Well,
we
yeah,
appreciate all your work on that.
I can honestly say, out of 10 years here, that was the worst day I've ever had working in public works. So one thing I learned is don't interject your goodwill to let somebody think that things won't happen when you don't have control over it, and to do everything you can to make it doesn't happen again. So what we figured out is we know we can control that, and what we've decided as a staff is we're gonna, if we have to manage them, then we'll manage, we're not gonna rely on them to take care of what they can take care of. So we know what it takes now, so we feel a little bit better about anything that might come up.
And, that was probably, if we're going to admit one mistake, that mistake was the fact that we didn't take matters into our own hands earlier on those days, on the first couple of weeks of January.
That's a lot of money, we shouldn't have to.
We shouldn't have to, but in this case, Eric and them, our public works team, they handled the situation. And we aren't going to let that happen again. In this, from the staff perspective, we're horrified by what happened to that neighborhood. We've run that facility for 17 years without a single issue. There's not a single issue that's ever come even close to this. And the facility is under construction. When that happens, anybody who knows anything about public contracts law, you basically cede responsibility over to somebody else. In this case, we probably should have stepped in a lot earlier on things, even if it would have drawn a lawsuit. And quite frankly, as Eric and the crew remember, that facility is still under construction, and we stepped in. You know, we just basically pushed them out of the way and said, "Get out of the way. We aren't going to let the neighborhood have the problems that it had before." And hopefully, as we take over this, we operate many pumps and many facilities in this town. We don't have these issues. We've got a very professional, efficient staff. But you know, the idea that as we come up on all these things, we hope we have the right people in place, and that it's not going to happen again.
I know we have a few of the residents in the audience. I didn't know if any of them would like to speak tonight to this, address this at all. Any questions? Hasn't been covered?
Thank you to the city. I
Thank
just want
you,
to say
Eric.
thank you. You see all that effort and we really appreciate it. We really do. So thank you for that.
No protest.
So my only question, sorry to interrupt.
Can you talk to the microphone, please?
Go to the mic.
Yeah, for sure.
If
So,
everyone can see you.
I think we've kind of talked about it a little bit already, but my only question is, how would you do things differently in the future if you knew this was going to overflow?
Take control of the situation.
Start pumping it ourselves and not wait for the contractor.
Yeah.
In 17 years, we've never had an issue with this when we've been in control on it.
Just a question on the financial side of it, is that, are we as a city absorb all that, or who's all this extra work on those pumps and all that works?
We won't, at the end of the day.
I think that's something that the lawyers all have to come together with. But, it's not the city's intention to have to pay that out of our budget at all.
Because once again, it wasn't our responsibility.
Anyone else? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank
Okay,
you, Eric.
yeah. Move on to our discussion items. The first one is the authorization to pursue construction of the parking lot at First and Abbey Street. So, Councilmember Anderson will recuse himself because he has property in the area there. Is there conflict?
I see Eric charging up to the microphone right now. I think I'll go ahead and take this item. Mayor and Council, tonight's staff's just simply asking authorization to complete the project and take out the bid for the construction of the parking lot between on First Street between Abbey and Main Street. This will be a public parking lot. For the most part, the construction drawings are being finalized. Something that included is the site plan for the hotel. This is a 38 space parking lot that for the most part, I think we've had these same drawings for about 4 years. We've been waiting to build it for 4 years, and it's ready to go out to bid. We estimate that it's going to cost about $120,000. There's already been some work that's been done. We already have all the storm drain improvements as part of the project are done. All the drain inlets are in. At this point, there's a couple of segments. The city crew will be doing part of it first. We're going to have to run some of the conduit for all the electrical that eventually will go in once the project's surveyed. We'll go ahead and do that. But for the most part, this project will include the paving, the concrete work for the landscaping wells that go in. And then finally, once all that's in, the installation of the the lighting and the electrical will all be done for a separate contract. One of the things we had a meeting with some of the downtown property owners last week. One variable that's still out there has to do with potentially the installation of maybe a trash compactor or receptacle that would be located potentially on the parking lot. And it makes a lot of sense for the property owners and the businesses to get together on this thing. The meeting wasn't as successful as we probably would have liked it to be, but we're going to send a note out to everybody asking them that maybe they need to convene and determine what they want to do as far as that trash compactor would go. And at the end of the day, it's not the city's deal, but there's a lot of very good things that could happen if that block of property owners, including the hotel, could just come together. There's a very good chance that they could save money on their trash bills, that there can be a more efficient distribution of how the trash goes. And more importantly, as people who come to the hotel, at the planning commission meeting, we had an absolutely fabulous proposal come in from Various Gap regarding some alley activation and a patio that they want to put out in the back. With Quonset hut is now, people don't want to be looking at trash cans or trash bins. That just doesn't work. So I think there's a lot of incentive for them to come together. We'll ask them to do that, but they'll become a point where the ship's going to have to sail. So either they're going to have to come together on this thing, or we're just going to build a parking lot as you see it in this drawing.
So, any questions?
Yeah. If the compactor or trash area goes for in this parking lot area, does it take up some of the parking spots? Was it going in one of these landscape corners, or what was the thought of it when went there? Where would it be?
Well, initially, probably the most realistic place for it to go would be in one of the corners on the parking lot, either on the corner of the alley on First Street, which would be, if you're looking at the site plan, it would be in the southwesterly corner of it. It would take out 2 parking spaces, and the orange crate. But the one thing we've asked is, obviously we know how sensitive parking spaces are on things, and here's what you need to know about having a trash compactor. The trash truck has to come into it straight. It can't, a trash compactor, it's not like you get out and move the bin around or anything. It's a very efficient device. It's very practical. It actually saves a ton of space. The troubling thing about it is that, you might give up a couple of parking spaces, but even better, you would get rid of all of the trash bins that are littering the alley right now. There's a trade-off on things that make some aesthetic and very practical uses on this thing. So anyway, I'll acknowledge my sensitivity to parking spaces, but the one thing that this has to come from, it has to come from the business, the property owners and the businesses on that block of Main Street.
Questions, comments?
Just a comment, in the future, when we have some big project like the hotel come in, maybe we can have that as part of the plan, the plan for something like that. I mean, it probably wasn't on our radar at the time to have a compactor, but, if it was, it just seems like, I'm not judging the process. I'm all for this parking. I'm ready to pass it, but it just seems like something that maybe we can have a value set on the next time. No criticism.
It has been brought up a number of times when the hotel was proposed that They need to come up with
Have
a way to deal
For me.
with their waste, and even when we talked about doing the alley activation plan,
Yeah.
that's all been discussed. It's been in the planning process, but the problem was if we don't have the whole downtown business group that have come together and made a decision on exactly how we're gonna do it yet. And we're getting to that crunch point now, I think, where the hotel's hopefully opening soon. And we need the parking lot, not only for the hotel, but for the rest of the businesses downtown. And I'd be one of the first ones to say, you know, I really don't want to give up 2 parking spaces. We've fought so hard to get as many parking spaces that we have to this point. But if that comes up with a solution for our downtown businesses to be able to have a location there that they agree on, something that will work for them, they can come together with a plan on putting a compactor in there. I think that's something you would bring that back to the council for some discussion. So at this point, we're looking at giving you authorization. We'll talk about whether we want to do that tonight to move ahead with the plan, just paving it as the plans currently are. I have a question in for Carol. Carol, if the businesses came together with a plan on putting a compactor on that lot, so I'm assuming it's gonna need to be on a concrete pad, is that right?
Yes, and an enclosure, obviously.
And all around it, and is it also going to need to have a drain in it?
Should not have a drain because they're self-contained units.
Sometimes those things will leak and they may not want that to leak into storm drains. I think that's something we need to look into when we're doing some of the underground work, whether that needs to have a drain plumb to that area or not, and 3-phase power, those types of things, so.
Well, they are gonna need to put their organics someplace and that they're gonna go in compactors, so organics is what you might see usually, so that would be a good reason to have a good drainage system.
Nice part is the sewer runs down the alley.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a question. Can we run into a storm drain, or does it need to go into the sewer?
We'd have to run the sewer.
The sewer. So we also have a grease trap over there that comes right off the hotel. It has to be pumped out from that parking lot as well, right?
Correct.
So, yeah, I guess we want to move forward, you know, with making our plans. It would be nice to know what the businesses want to do, so we're hoping that they can come together soon before it's too late. Costs less to do it once rather than put in a parking lot and tear it up and redo part of it for a compactor later, so.
Is there a time frame, John, as far as when the hotel folks think they're gonna have that lot cleared up and ready for the parking lot to be done?
Yeah, they've said give them a couple of weeks and they'll clear off the lot.
Oh, really?
Just saying.
It'll be clear by Thursday.
Thursday, not Thursday. What we're gonna do is we're gonna line up what we need to have done. And, like I say, we do everything we say that we're going to do. And we're gonna line this thing up and we'll finish, I know they're finishing the construction drawings. Construction drawings for a parking lot aren't super fancy. So we'll be able to finish that up. If the downtown property owners and businesses get their act together, then it'll be easy. We know what we need to put in. You need to put in a concrete pad, run some electrical to it, put a drain in it, and come up with a design. By the way, and they're gonna have to pay for that. And that won't come out of this budget. But there's, you know, you tell people the most expensive part of your trash is the air that's in the trash can. That's the most expensive part. If they can come together, you get a compactor. They're very efficient, and at the end of the day, people save money by doing it.
I just have a question based on your comment. Is there a date that the downtown businesses, if they came together, is there a date where this could be implemented in tandem? Or will it, no matter what, have to be done afterward? You know, is there like a date, say they come up with a plan and then before we begin, could it be combined?
we know that they've got preliminary construction drawings on this right now. We're gonna line this thing up. We will have to have this thing out to bid by the end of this month. So we've got a couple of weeks.
So I know, is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak? I know we have a couple of other downtown business owners. Any questions, comments on the parking lot or? Yeah.
Chris Turkovich, Turkovich County Lines. So just, clarification on the schedule here. So we've got a couple weeks to come up with a plan. So that downtown that doesn't have a business association has 2 weeks to come up with an agreement.
That's it.
To do this.
It's 2 weeks.
It's actually 13 days.
Secondly, I was not able to attend the meeting last week, and I have not had a chance to get updated from my representative. But just other options, so it's trash issue is gonna be this parking lot. Is that the only location in downtown that is an option? I'll get an updated summary. Were there any other options on the table besides this parking lot?
And across the street, where you're taking stuff out.
Yeah, across the street on the other side of Railroad. Or there was also another option brought up about potentially out here outside of City Hall on this side, down along that area where we have parking in there currently as well as trees. So, yeah, those.
Is there a city position on any of those?
It
I guess what's the city's position? This is the best location for it?
From a practicality standpoint, realizing that there's gonna be residents from the apartments and all those things, it's gonna have to be on that block someplace. And, it's gotta be on that block. And, quite frankly, we've offered up what we think is probably the best location for it. Because it's on the block, there's easy access for all the businesses, the hotel, the restaurant, all those folks, they aren't gonna wanna be heating stuff across streets or anything like that. So we've offered up what we think is the best location for it. And it's easy to construct. We're gonna have construction going on. Access, like I said, the trash truck has to be able to pull in and get it. From a noise standpoint, from who's going to be disrupted, if the trash is picked up, you're not going to disrupt City Hall or anything. So if somebody can come up with a better location, knock yourself out.
Yeah,
But-
I was gonna say-
About a year ago, Waste Management and some of the businesses had a meeting and the pocket park was discussed. And so I know that it worked for
can't
Waste
get it in there.
Management. What's that?
You can't, well, we don't want to give up the pocket park, but you also can't access it with the.
According to Waste Management, at that meeting, they said they could access it. We measured the Waste Management representatives were there and measured it, said that was an option.
Yeah, the idea that a truck that's got 10 to 14 tons of trash in the back going up and down the alley there, that I think that we're gonna invest some money in, probably isn't such a hot idea. That park, kind of the vision element for the hotel, that Paseo going into downtown, the idea of having a big trash container in the middle of it. Probably, we probably had 5 iterations of the art park, the pocket park, the Paseo park. None of them have ever had a big trash back.
Yeah, and then from the downtown business, having currently no district or association, I guess what's in a short time frame, is there an interest from the parties other than the hotel to come up with a solution in 2 weeks? It'll never, it's going to negatively affect the hotel, possibly Barrios and Gap, if they're going to invest all that money into the second entrance there. But there doesn't seem to be a lot of pressure for interest from any of the other businesses?
I think there is. I mean, I've gone to a couple of the downtown business meetings, and there is a lot of cooperative enthusiasm to come up with a solution that's mutually beneficial to everybody. Unfortunately, at the meeting we had last week, we didn't have the numbers on costs, so I do have those now, and we're comparing that to what everybody's paying. We add up all the merchants on that alley, so we should have some good numbers by tomorrow afternoon. I want to get everybody re-engaged. I don't think we have to have the association, nailed down, but we just have to have a commitment that this is an individual spot, and some kind of numbers that you can all kind of at least see, so you're not committing to some unknown.
Do you have ballpark numbers now?
I think we're looking at about $8,000 a month. But that would be everybody on that alley. I don't know, and I don't have your numbers on what you're all paying, and that's just garbage and recycling. And then organics is another whole separate thing. And that doesn't include creating space, pads, enclosure, the power, and all those other expenses to get it all developed. But it's just anybody on it. So, I should have more numbers tomorrow.
Ambitious 2 weeks. Are there any additional meetings set up that you're aware of?
With the downtown business owners, not that I'm aware of.
No. Carol's gonna send everybody, we're gonna include everybody on the email, and we're hoping that leader's gonna emerge and bring everybody together and say, this is where we wanna do it. Because then, we're offering not only what we think is a good location, but there's a lot of things that we can instantly start putting estimates on what it would do and incorporating it into some of the things that we would do on this project.
So the actual agenda item tonight is whether or not we're going to pursue with construction of the parking lot as designed. The trash compactor, all that is not actually part of the agenda item tonight, but I think what we would like to see is a recommendation from the downtown business owners come together, and maybe it won't be one site, maybe you'll have, tell us what's the most preferred site you think where this type of thing should be located, and bring those options back to us so the council could, discuss it as an agenda item and see what's the best way to go, what everybody agrees on. So.
Can we put that can we do that for next month?
Next
For the
couple weeks.
next meeting's on the 19th.
You'll have a month, a couple weeks.
I can tell you from the staff perspective, we need to get construction drawings done and going. Those types of things that are completed, and we need to start putting together the mechanism to take this thing out to bid. It has to be bid.
That can be amended if the downtown business group comes together and says, we want to put it in a specific site, and then we can discuss whether or not we want to change those plans at that time.
Because we're going to start getting to crunch time, because obviously as the hotel gets ready to open, there's an expectation from all the businesses and property and people who have brought up the parking issue that we've told them that this parking lot is going to be open before the hotel opens. And we have to get that done. This is March. If we send this thing out to bid, it's going to be towards the end of April when we are awarding things. That means we're getting into May to get into construction on this thing. They're thinking that they will be soft opening sometime in the early part of the summer, whatever that means. But we need to have the parking lot constructed and ready to go by June. We have to have that done. So our ability to slow down at this point to talk about it anymore, we've had a long time to talk about it.
Any more discussion? Yes, Al.
Albert Lyons, COP 10 Main Street. In my experience as a project manager working for the university, just some advice for whoever's going to design this thing. You need to include a hot water hookup so you can wash it. At the university, it's required. It's also required to be hooked up to a sanitary sewer. not the storm drain. So there's lots of things you need to look at, and rather than trying to rush it, you can just figure those things out. Because 2 years from now, bunch of unhappy users, it's probably getting worse for you. So my advice is a 30-year person doing construction documents is to take the time now, if it even means 2 or 3 weeks, to do it right. Otherwise, people will be paying for it in the long run. Don't forget the hot water.
Yeah, and I think those are good points, thank you, but those things need to be considered by the downtown business association group. When they come together to discuss where it's gonna be, you know, what, if we were to look at the spot next to City Hall over here, you know, what would it take to bring in the power, hot water, the drainage and all that kind of stuff as a cost? All those things have to be looked into when that decision is made. For any location, whether it's on the other side of railroad, over here in this parking lot, over here, whatever preferred location that the businesses have. Those are things that have to be considered in that final decision, I guess.
So something helping is where we're at right now is sounds like there's a lot of things you guys need input from the businesses downtown. And so I think we should, as we work on an association, you guys can be working on a list of stuff that we should be taking a look at. You know, some of us have been working on parking for a number of years, trash and things like water. If we need input on details like that, we need a little heads up to organize and take a look at all the options. So,
yes,
appreciate that.
Carol would be our lead on that, right, Carol?
Okay, yes.
Yeah.
You want a piece of paper, Carol?
Carol's retiring in years. She doesn't care.
You go, Carol. Hot water.
Hello, Joe Gando, 41 through 47 Main Street, property owner. I was present at the garbage summit and didn't get a little off track. There's a lot of good things that got mentioned during that conversation and discussion. Some additional issues that pertain to that is cost sharing, how it's going to be all allocated, fines, dumping that shouldn't be, pay for it, waste management is particularly our stance at going for that stuff. Also, the issue of organics wasn't really discussed much of that, but I'm going to assume probably going to smell pretty nice in the middle of summer. And I am the one that goes over behind City Hall. Another option would be on First and Abbey, bus stop right there. I can park on there, and the truck could come in. Nice little turn into enclosure. We done pretty well, in my opinion.
You're talking about the corner of the parking lot at First Avenue. Yeah.
As an alternate. You can use the walls as signboard for parking to help guide you toward parking location. That's number one. And then number two, we had Barry Essa come in last, there was a planning commission, and they got approved for that project. I had a thought after that is, where are they going to stage their construction material? Porta potties, all that stuff. Will they be allowed to utilize the parking lot in the same way that the hotel was? It's a city-owned parking lot. Can they lease that? Would I be able to lease that for staging? If not, it's going to make their project and future projects much more costly, less attractive to do. It's a higher investment in the alley upgrade. See what you guys have to say about that.
So that is definitely something I think that we have to consider, how that parking lot's going to be used for. If we want that alley to be improved, that's our whole goal, the alley activation plan. And they will, when they do construction, when Barry Essa does our construction when you do anything on your property, any of the business owners that belong there, they're gonna need some area for staging their construction, so. Definitely something that we're gonna have to, yeah.
And probably not the whole parking lot, but,
No.
you know, the one thing
They're
that,
not gonna be that
No,
scale.
it's adequate space for the
Yeah.
project.
that, you know, is, you know, I talked with Joe a little bit today, and, we absolutely want to work with everybody to try to make all this stuff come out. And, you know, even sometimes to our detriment a little bit. But we absolutely, you know, as they come up with projects and things that they want to do, it's all about just working together. Eventually, we can do it. In this case, the property owners and the business owners have got to work together to figure out what they want to do on this thing. Because it's not our issue at this point. Our issue is to build this parking lot and get it in. And if we can work on a way to help accommodate them, absolutely. But right now, they've at least got to commit to say, yep, this is what we want to do. And Carol's worked very hard. You know, poor Carol, she gets it from both sides on everything. But she's done an absolutely wonderful job on lining everything up. She's going to the Senate 2 meeting. She can't come back unless they have an
One more. I just have to disagree with that statement. Remember, this hotel was passed without a parking plan, without a trash plan. So the city is as responsible as the property owners and the business owners to be involved in planning this and creating a solution for it.
We're here to work with the downtown business group. We want to help facilitate it as much as we can.
It is your problem.
Yeah, it's all of our problem.
Exactly. That's right.
Yeah.
Clarifying.
Yep.
I'd like to make a motion.
Okay, there's no more discussion on Will. Go ahead and open it up for a motion.
I'd like to move to make a motion, I'm sorry, this is all much discussion, to accept the staff recommendation and authorization to pursue the construction of parking lot at Abbey and First Street by state.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None? So I just want to say, yeah, I was at that trash summit and there wasn't a lot of good stuff. It wasn't, you know, complete fuss. It brought a lot of the business owners together to start having that serious discussion about what needs to be done. There were representatives there from Waste Management who addressed some of the issues that business owners have been having as far as contaminated loads and the camera use on their trucks and those types of things. And the representative from Waste Management was very helpful and gave out her number, her email, said, if anybody gets that notice, give her a call, send her an email, let her know, and she'll definitely work with you on getting all that cleared up. So there were a lot of good things that came out of that meeting as well. Okay, we can move on to the next discussion item, but see if Carol can come back in and join us. Thank you, everyone. We can, do discussion, move the item C from the consent calendar to discussion item number 2. Is the council okay with that? Okay, so what we'll have next is the agenda item, discussion item 2 will be the discussion of the Hispanic Music Festival. Councilmember Lauren asked to discussion item.
Thank you. All we're being asked tonight is to approve the amplified sound permit, and it's a very simple thing. You know, do we have amplified sound or not? And I have no problem with the passing of an amplified sound permit. And I just want to say that you know, if you go back maybe 8 months or so, the Chamber of Commerce was looking for a new executive director, and we looked within the city of Winters. We looked hard, and we found somebody in Sacramento. We found Eric Stein, and He has worked so hard and has become so innovative. And I see this, this project, although I'm not completely, even though I've had many conversations with him over this, I'm really not sure of the whole fleshed out concept of the event, but it is innovative. And he brings that new energy. And I just want to give kudos to him for bringing that to Winners and shaking things up a bit. It is a Hispanic music festival, which I think that, we sure we can have more of those. The thing that we've wrestled with between my conversations with him and the Hispanic Advisory Committee and so forth is that it is a change in that it's a pay, you pay to attend event. And I think that just is something I want to mention on the dais, that it is a change in the events that we've had. Our events are generally all free and always open to the public, and this is open to the public, obviously, but it is a change, and I just think that should be mentioned. And I also think that when you accept innovation and change, sometimes it means that part of you has to change too. So I just want to acknowledge that it is a different, it's a different energy of an event. It's a different type of event, and it is new. And I think we're lucky to have Eric. I just want to say that publicly. And it's different. It's going to be different, but maybe it'll be really fun.
I'll just comment.
Yes.
I think that, as I understand, because I knew that this was on the agenda tonight, and I understand that there have been some miscommunication things going on, but I'm glad it's coming around. The one thing that was pointed out to me, though, and I don't expect it to change at this point, but it is the week after, isn't it? The week after Youth Day.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, it is.
And I think maybe it would be better in the future if we spread it out a little, those kind of things. So as long as everything comes back to us when it's time to vote on it and all the details are settled.
I kind of wanted to interrupt you on that date, being a week after Youth Day. One of the things that Eric and I and Chris Calvert and his representatives went round and round on is, that some of us in the Hispanic, most of us in the Hispanic Advisory Committee, just, we're a little bit sensitive about having something on Cinco de Mayo because of all the associations of that day being kind of a day to drink and party in Mexico, but it's not Mexican Independence Day. That's in September. So if there was if there was an ability in the calendar to move it 1 week later, I think it would be very welcome. But I think the idea of Hispanic music party, is going to be a fun addition in Winners, even if it's later in the month. Maybe especially if it's later.
Yes, Councilmember Anderson. Just one comment. I got the date, I believe, that weekend is Village Spring Show goes on.
I think usually it's the first weekend.
It's always the Saturday after the meeting. I just wanted to say.
Yeah, I'm not part of the concept of the event. I've only just been a little bit on, giving input. And I'm just really glad that they want to bring some new energy and they want to do something different, and they also want to work with the community. And I just see those all as positive things. A little bit different, makes for change, but I think overall, it's going to be a good event.
So, yeah, I've been I've talked to Eric Stein from the chamber a few times on this. And my understanding is there's a couple local young men who came to the chamber and they presented this idea to the chamber to see if this is something that the chamber would like to be involved with along with them, to bring more awareness to the Hispanic music, that type of thing. And this is a first time they're wading into this type of event, and there are a lot of details to work out on it. I think from what I've heard so far, it sounds very promising, bringing another event like this to town. There are logistics, as you mentioned. There's the weekend after Youth Day, 4-H spring show, things like that to consider. So it may have an effect on how successful it is as well. But these are all things that will need to be worked out. I think Eric has done a great job with the chamber and working with these two men, and helping to bring this together. So I'm behind them 100% on it.
I was just looking forward to finding more out about, what the event will be. And, we're just here to approve an amplified sound permit. We just, there's so much behind the scenes that I just wanted to, thank the chamber for being very forthright and listening. And I'm looking forward to finding out more about this event.
Further discussion? Anyone in the public like to comment on it? Anyone? Okay, then I will open it up for a motion.
To approve the sound,
The amplified sound permit.
I'll move to approve this amplified sound permit.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? None? Passes unanimously. Thank you. Okay, the next item on our agenda is general plan element review on community design.
Mayor and Council, this is the second of a 9-part series that we'll be bringing up on a monthly basis. As I mentioned to the council, the city's general plan has 10 elements, and we're going to kind of just come through and give an update on 9 of them. I don't think anybody's too thrilled about getting an update on the administration element. But the general plan is meant to create a vision for the build out of the city. The document's best described as a very evolutionary document. At the outset, a general plan includes a lot of policies and objectives that are meant to help lay the groundwork for the city to move forward and actually become what that general plan says. The city has each one of the seven of the elements address the required elements that the state of California has for us. But one of the optional elements is the community design element, completely optional, and was added into the city's general plan to incorporate many of the ideas of the things that the city really finds important that they want to preserve. And many of those things included things like architecture, the pedestrian orientation, and preservation of many of the things that make Winters a unique community. There are basically 3 main goals that the community design element has, and those are the coherent and distinctive physical form and structure that reflect Winters' small town qualities and agricultural heritage, the idea of preserving the existing community character and fabric, and promote the development of neighborhoods and districts that emphasize pedestrian convenience. And then the third goal is that the city will work to maintain and enhance the quality of the Winters landscape and streetscape. So in order to do that, there's a number of different plans and things that the city incorporated. I'll share with you that probably one of the most important aspects of advancing much of this had to do with the city's former redevelopment agency. If you look at the general plan, redevelopment played a very important role because it got towards the preservation side of what the city had. And there's still a number of holes that we have in our overall framework that redevelopment probably could have helped in the retrofitting of buildings. We have a lot of unreinforced masonry buildings in town that redevelopment could have helped. But when you look at community design, there's been some things that we've actually gone out and done. The first has to do with a lot of the various types of design guidelines that we have. Back in 1998, the city adopted its first quote-unquote design guidelines for the city, very general in their scope, but in many ways they talked about some of the agricultural heritage elements of the city. Those things really were folded into a number of other key design elements that the city has. One of the things, gosh, if you can believe 10 years ago, we put together the Grant Avenue Design Guidelines, which
10 years already?
actually we get to let them. But we have the Grant Avenue Design Guidelines, which did a couple of things. Number one, it broke Grant Avenue up as a very distinctive district. The idea, I think, as we move forward in 2005, 2006, one of the things that the downtown master plan included in it was the idea that we wouldn't try and create faux architecture. The idea, and if you look at the hotel that's going in across the street, it's not meant to be, Knott's Berry Farm, like we make the whole downtown look like itself. It's a modern building that takes in various types of design elements into it. The Grant Avenue Design Guidelines distinctively pulled that area out and said, you know what, there's some things that can be done that will give an homage to the agricultural heritage of Winters, but incorporate design things that will make that a distinctly separate and distinct area. For the downtown, we have our form-based code, and in that document, there's a very important preamble in it, and it talks about the examination of the DNA for the downtown. And that includes a lot of very common features. The idea that as far as traditional setbacks go, the idea of bringing in a mixed use of commercial on the bottom and residential going up top. The downtown form-based code is the closest thing to saying, okay, here are all these things that are very traditional about the downtown, but we'll give them a little bit of a modern context. And I will tell you that in the Sacramento region, we were the second city to adopt a form-based code. I know the council's gone to a lot of the local government commission meetings. We were the second to do that. One of the things that we've done as part of this element of the general plan is we have the design review committee. And it works very actively with people that are looking to do projects in the downtown, looking to do projects, whether they are the residential subdivisions or what have you. One of the key elements that we've adopted is our updated public works standards that we have. One of the goals in the community design element is the idea that we will work to create neighborhoods and districts that emphasize pedestrian convenience. And if you look at the way that the new subdivisions are starting to shape up, you see that readily. It's starting to come out, and it takes a little bit of a trained eye, but we've done some things. We've shrunk the streets. For those of us who remember what skinny streets are, the idea of going to those, the idea of class 1 bike and pedestrian ways, emphasizing class 2 bike lanes. If you look at every street in the newly approved subdivisions, they've either got a class 1 or class 2 bike and pedestrian ways that go in it. The idea of separating to get the pedestrians out of the traffic. The idea of alley loading, that people can walk completely unencumbered from going over things like driveways. So it's a very easy convenience. those are all included in our public works standards. And there are some things that we do that don't get very much appreciation. When we adopted the standards, that's usually the eye roll item that when the engineers get excited. The idea of the development agreements and subdivision improvement agreements that we have, those are all implementation elements for everything that we do. Understand that the agreements that the city council adopts correlate back all the way to this general plan element that says, in order to get what we want, we are going to specifically call it out in the agreements that we have with folks. This is the design standard that you're going to use. This is how it's going to implement. Additionally, the community design element includes some implementing, additional visionary documents. One of those is the bike and pedestrian system master plan. All of implementation items that are critical. And then finally, the most recent thing that we've done includes the downtown parking master plan, or the downtown plan. What that does is it seeks to find ways that, okay, this is how we're going to address parking, but in such a way that it adds to the character of downtown on things. Just in summary, the community design element is something that if when you look at a general plan, your elements need to cross into each other all over. The circulation element coincides with the land use element, which includes the housing element, which includes the idea of how we look at how things are designed and built. So there's this, it kind of bounces in between each other on various things. Like I mentioned at the outset, the general plan is an evolutionary document. In this case, the community design element is doing two things. We see what we've done in the downtown as far as our form-based code, preservation of things that we think are really important. But then if you go out on Granite Avenue, or how we address things in, even in the subdivisions. If you look at our development agreements, I think we have 5, 6. Okay, so 6 people in this room have all served on the planning commission. You get it. Let's look at the design review. What is I don't think we've approved anything that's a neoclassical house. Nothing Spanish style. Spanish style is not yet. But if you look at the way that we've improved the various design elements, all those things are absolutely critical. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions. Councilmember Newt has given me, told me that I only have less than 10 minutes.
I give you a whole 10 minutes, but that's okay, you don't have to use it.
Yeah.
Just
Any questions from the council? And Kate, you submitted a paper earlier. You would like to comment on this. Welcome you to come up at this time.
That is still 400 Martin Street, number 21. And thank you so much to City Manager John Dunleavy for doing this series of updates on the general plan. I really appreciate it. It's obviously a really important topic, and this is a great first start. One thing before getting to the community design element is back last month, I think it was the February 5th meeting, and I expressed enthusiasm for there being a series of public workshops about the general plan, similar to the so far quite successful workshops about the strategic plan, but to talk about the general plan and some of the different elements of it. There's staff's done a lot of work on this, and there certainly is interest within the community about having discussion with this, and so that remains something that I'd be enthusiastic about. I know on February 5th, staff seemed amenable for there to be ongoing public discussion about that. And so I'd be curious in hearing what the update in the current thinking is about having a series of public workshops about that. So then, more specific to this particular element of the general plan, a couple points that have come to my mind thinking about this. One is pace of development, which is certainly something that I've mentioned before. That I think that this would be something that would be very valuable for our community to have before we're presented with a situation where we have to decide whether or not to approve a large proposed project. And so if we have the discussion now or soon, then we have that under our belt, and it's the city being in the driver's seat about that, rather than having to figure out what we want to do about that when it's the time to make the actual decision. And so that'd be something that I think would be great for the city to have a conversation about now. Certainly, if we have a discussion about that, I'll back up. Smaller projects, for example, would give us the ability to practice adaptive management. We can learn from a project as it comes in, as opposed to if we approve of one large project all at once, then we don't have the ability to learn from what worked and what maybe we'd like to do differently in the future. As Councilmember New said, that SACOG has said that all the cities really need to work very hard to meet the greenhouse gas reduction guidelines. And I think the community design element is a really key place that our community could look at doing this. Certainly there's been a lot of work saying that residential structures are a huge contributor to greenhouse gas production. And so I know our winner's design guidelines are from 1999. And so there's been a lot of really good work done on this in the past 20 years. And so I'd be very enthusiastic about a discussion about making sure that we are including the current best management practices in that. I know Carol Sienna has been doing a lot of work on the climate action plan. And so I want to make sure that that's incorporated in that the thinking from the climate action plan is included in the community design guidelines as we move forward. I'd like to say that I think one of the strengths of our community is that we do have good design guidelines, and that not only do we have them, we use them. I know that for example, with the discussion around Dollar General, we have a pretty good looking Dollar General because we have design guidelines and we hold businesses to it. I know that actually the Calaveras County Planning Commission looked at pictures of Winters' Dollar General and then could say, hey, you know what, actually, to an applicant, yeah, actually your company can do this type of signage, for example, because they've done it here. And so thank you to everybody in the city who's been involved in that. And that's I think one of the benefits of having these good design guidelines. And so I look forward to there being just continued discussion of this. I think if we just continue to state our vision, which is, as John said, a big part of what a general plan does, we state our vision and then look and make sure that we have the current best management practices for achieving that vision, that really sets us up for continued success.
Thank you, Kate. You know, one of the things you brought up about how fast we grow, I know that's been something that has been discussed every time a large development has come to town, and that's been part of the discussion that we've always had in the councils before us as far as how fast we want to grow, and a lot of them have been phased in, so it's not all coming at one time, and that's, I'm sure, something will continue to be on our minds and all these things come forward in the future. Yeah. As far as having workshops for general plan workshops, I think it's a good idea. We have to get through our strategic planning workshops, get that on track and get those done. And I'm sure there will be workshops in the future on the general plan as well. there?
Yeah, I just wanted to make a comment also on the pace of development. When, as I mentioned earlier, at Grass Valley, Governor Newsom spoke, and one of the things that he talked about was, you know, how cities address housing. And basically, there's the idea at the state level that cities aren't building enough housing, but yet we're approving housing. It's the developers that are taking a really long time to get after it. I mean, when did we approve the housing that we have? Over 10 years ago? So it's just barely coming in. So I actually think that the pace of development is something that will protect the city when it comes to the state maybe wanting to take money away from us. I think if we have a pace of development agreement that we can say that this is our pace of development, this is how fast houses are going to go in, it also will protect money in the long run from this, because the state is talking about taking away fees and taking away money from cities that don't develop at a certain rate. Well, if it's not our fault, if it's from the developers themselves, you know, we could show that we have a plan. So I think having some sort of developed pace of development work for city planners would behoove us in the long run and protect us.
Yeah, along those same lines, if we listened to everything that came out of the state's mouth, over 5 years ago, we would have had over 5,000 more people in this town. And we were supposed to be at, what, 12,500 over 5 years ago, according to them?
Yeah. Our general plan says that the city should have been built out in 2010.
Okay, so 8
And
years, 9 years.
So, you know, as we talk, we're about 50% behind.
Yeah.
And you know, I'm glad that Kate brings this up, because there's an economics that goes into everything. Realize that the general plan is a business document for the city. It describes services and goals and things that the city wants to have. And part of it is the ability to keep up with inflation. If you run a business, if you aren't keeping up with whether it's revenue growth or what have you, the cost of living, you're going to get behind. And for our city, there are many things that you know we're starting to really start to hit into. Winters is getting much older. The idea of services for seniors and the like. One of the biggest needs in this community is market rate rental housing. It doesn't exist right now. It is very limited. So the ability for us to analyze a lot of these things from an economic and a financial standpoint are really important. We have people that have certain needs of things that they want to be happening in town, and quite honestly, not everybody is happy when we cry poor. Why isn't the pool open there, year round? Why can't I swim? Why do I have to drive to Davis or back at home and all those things? We get it. Some of these discussions are important. And by the way, I think we'll probably get into a lot of discussion on this stuff is when we kick into the general plan refresh, where we look to make the document more transparent and those types of things. The rate of growth, we're going to get into our housing element. Get ready for that. Councilman New is going to bring our regional housing needs allocation from SACOG as our representative on those types of things. So I think there'll be plenty of lively discussion on things.
Just want to clarify one thing that John maybe said inadvertently, but I think I heard it. So that SACOG set a really high standard for the greenhouse gases. It was the state that did it. And SACOG is the one that's trying to find ways that we can attain those. But also SACOG worked hard to get them a little lower. In fact, they worked in a clause that if the state doesn't come through and help us somewhat, the state may have to bring it down to 18 instead of 19. But the problem is that then the state gives the money to SACOG, and SACOG is going to be distributing the money. And the only power that SACOG has is that if we don't come up with our housing element as it's supposed to be, then they probably won't give us as much money as we would like to have. So it's difficult. And I think the more that we can talk about what we want, and I think Kate's idea of public meetings and getting it out in the public as to what we really desire, and the sooner the better, so that it's clear to everybody. And I guess that either the next meeting that we have not, or the next month's meeting, we're either going to do land use or the one after, I don't know which, but you said either April or May. So that's coming soon, and that's another time that we can talk about public input, and maybe public would want to input at that time.
Any more discussion?
Yes.
Councilman Mills. In our consent calendar tonight, we adopted the green themes go reapplication. And that's going to play a factor too. This is a huge factor.
Yeah, the whole Green Means Go, the pre-application is part of the proposal from SACOG. Councilman Newton tuned me up on the 19% goal attainment that they have. But Green Means Go is one of those vehicles that they're looking to try and get to the greenhouse gas reduction attainment goals that they're trying to hit. And you're right, it's a big deal, because it's going to involve trying to figure out what to do from an economic development standpoint to reduce the number of vehicle miles traveled. When it comes to winters, when we talk about greenhouse gases, we only need to think about really one thing: vehicle miles traveled. And the way that you reduce that is working on things like jobs and housing balance, the types of housing that you put in to try and keep people from having to commute on various things. So it's a big deal. And the two categories, if people haven't read the item, the Green Means Go program is probably one of the best things I've seen literally in years. It's as good as redevelopment if they could ever pull the thing off.
Yeah, part of that we approved earlier, that for the pre-authorization we put in, and part of that it will address maybe accelerated infill projects, helping get some money to help see what we can do to help infill projects happen. There was the microtransit, as well as having transportation around town. There's also some items in there for maybe accelerating electric vehicle development, charging stations, those types of things. So if we're successful in getting some of that money, that will help us to achieve some of those greenhouse goals.
True. The other thing that we may be looking at is trying to get more jobs in town. Of course, that means we have to have the jobs, but activating or utilizing the upper floors of buildings. And, that, of course, means in the downtown area, a lot of retrofitting, but we're looking into that as well. So the problem is that we have too many people leaving town to work, and we create a lot of greenhouse gas in that. So we need more local jobs.
And with that, we also need reliable, fast broadband, so that people that are offered jobs to telecommute can actually telecommute successfully with the fastest broadband.
Mm-hmm. And actually, we've had some of that discussion at the economic development committee meetings, as far as what can we do to bring more of the jobs to town, and rezoning possibly some of the properties to other uses, and helping to have more jobs here in town. So that's something that will come to the council soon.
All right.
Discussion? Okay, we'll move on to the city manager's report.
No report today.
Can I say something? I did bring king cake. If you don't know what it is, it's for Mardi Gras. It's Fat Tuesday, it's the day before you start Lent and, clean up your act. The cake has a baby, which signifies that you're the next king, or you're the king. It has a little coin, so if you get the coin, it means that you will have wealth in the coming year. And there's a ring, which signifies marriage. So hopefully that'll go your way. But anyway, you're already married, I don't know what to do, but maybe you give it to somebody else. Anyway, it's fun, and I'd love to share it with you guys after.
Everybody's gonna come up and get a piece.
Gotta get a piece. Yes.
I thought if you got the baby, you had the next party.
Yes, that is true. That is true. And you bring in the cake next year to council.
Okay, on that note, I will adjourn the meeting.
Sorry, Seth.
All right, you can't leave without a piece.
Yeah, take a piece. Yeah.
That's what the tentative plan is right now. So,
Yeah.
Come on up. Yeah, my friends get it.
I wanted, I said, yeah, I want to get one.
Oh.
Okay, that's what you said. John.
Because I mean, you gotta bring the cake next year, 'cause you're coming.
And we had a party.
John, okay, I didn't know.
So we're gonna